The void outside the Nexari warship's observation deck was a black nothingness, punctuated by the distant gleam of stars. Nebulas painted swaths of violet and emerald across the panoramic viewport, casting an eerie glow over the polished steel surfaces. The hum of the ship's engines reverberated low through the floor, a constant reminder of the immense power harnessed within. Commander Nex'Kel stood rigid, eyes narrowing as he observed the scene unfolding below. The captive human orphans were gathered in a large containment module, their small forms huddled together beneath harsh, white lights that blinked overhead. They were silent, save for the quiet shuffles and occasional whimper that broke the oppressive stillness. To the Nexari, these children were mere commodities, prized captives for ransom or forced labor, to be sold or traded in the black markets of the outer systems. Yet, as Nex'Kel watched, a flicker of something unexpected stirred inside him, a glimmer of respect or perhaps unease. Such fragile creatures, he muttered, voice rough and clipped. His gaze shifted to the tactical display beside him, where data scrolled relentlessly. Ship status, enemy positions, fuel reserves. The Nexari armada was vast, a swirling formation of dreadnoughts and frigates that obscured the starfield like a storm of steel and fire. They had descended swiftly on the derelict human colony, where the orphans had been discovered, overwhelming the feeble defenses and taking the children without mercy. But then there was the arrival. A single human vessel, small but radiant against the darkness, blinked into sensor range. It came not as a cautious scout, but with purposeful boldness, its thrusters blazing a trail of cobalt light. The Nexari commanders exchanged wary glances. Quinlex, the ship's lead scientist, leaned forward over the console, fingers twitching with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. "This is illogical," Quinlex whispered, voice tinged with disbelief. "One ship against our entire armada. It must be an error, a desperate bluff." Nex'Kel's jaw tightened. He did not share Quinlex's certainty, but pride and experience told him not to underestimate an opponent. The human ship was brash, aggressive, and unwilling to back down, a rarity among the species they had encountered before. Nex'Kel's thoughts flickered back to the orphans, their wide eyes, the defiant set of their small jaws, despite the fear that must have gripped them. The ship's internal sensors picked up the faint vibrations of the human vessel's approach. The hum grew louder, a steady pulse against the cold sterility of the Nexari warship. Nex'Kel felt a knot tighten in his stomach, a rare sensation for a commander who was accustomed to fear inspiring obedience in his enemies, not the reverse. The human ship's silhouette became clearer against the cosmic backdrop, a sleek, angular design reminiscent of ancient Earth fighter jets yet imbued with advanced technology that shimmered with energy. Its engines flared as it closed the distance, unyielding and unafraid. Inside the human ship, Commander Elena Torres gripped the control yoke with steady hands. The tension coiled beneath her calm exterior like a tightly wound spring. The cabin smelled faintly of recycled air and burnt circuits, but her focus was absolute. She glanced briefly at the display showing the location of the orphans, their captor's ship, and then back to the starfield ahead. Behind her, Ryan Rodriguez, a seasoned soldier with eyes sharp as a hawk's, checked the weapons systems and secured the hatch. The small crew was tense but resolute. They had trained for this moment, for impossible odds and desperate gambits. These children were not just lives to be saved. They were a symbol of humanity's resilience, proof that even when stripped of home and family, they would fight back. As the human vessel closed in on the Nexari armada, a sudden pulse rippled through the Nexari ship's shields. The human craft had fired first. A precise, targeted strike aimed at the communications array. The blast knocked out key systems, plunging the warship into flickering darkness and sparking alarms that screamed through the corridors. Nex'Kel cursed, fists clenching. This was a declaration of war, a challenge that demanded an answer. The orphans inside the containment module stirred, some pressing their small faces against the transparent walls, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. Quinlex's voice cut through the chaos, tinged with cold fascination. They possess technology modifications unknown to us. Their weapons are highly efficient, their tactics unpredictable. The Nexari fleet's automated defense turrets activated, spewing a hail of plasma bolts toward the intruding vessel. But the human ship danced through the barrage with uncanny agility, slipping through gaps that no Nexari pilot would have dared attempt. The air inside Nex'Kel's command center crackled with tension as the younger officers shouted commands and scrambled to respond. Nex'Kel's mind raced. How many times had he faced foes who crumbled beneath the overwhelming force of the Nexari armada? How many had flinched or fled as soon as their defenses shattered? Yet this single human ship seemed almost impossible to pin down, moving like a shadow, striking with precision and speed that defied expectation. The orphans, sensing the turmoil, cried out suddenly, a chorus of frightened voices that pierced the cacophony of alarms and machinery. Elena's ship surged forward, weaving through the enemy fleet with calculated daring. She knew time was running out. The longer the orphans remained captive, the greater the risk of permanent loss. She felt the weight of every life she carried as if they were her own children. Ryan's voice crackled over the comms, calm but firm. "We're approaching docking range. Stand by for boarding." Elena nodded. Despite the others not seeing her, she gritted her teeth. The Nexari might have the numbers, the firepower, the brute strength of an entire armada. But this was humanity's moment. It was the moment when courage, ingenuity, and sheer determination could turn the tide. Back on the Nexari warship, Nex'Kel barked orders, rallying the crew to repel the boarding attempt. Trooper squads armed with energy rifles assembled, their armor gleaming under the emergency lights. The sterile corridors and battlements became arenas of tension, each step echoing with the possibility of confrontation. Quinlex continued his analysis, eyes flicking rapidly across the data streams. Their technology is adaptive. They learn and adjust faster than any species we have cataloged. This single vessel, Nex'Kel interrupted sharply, his voice cold steel, is a threat we must eliminate before it emboldens others. But deep inside, a whisper of doubt gnawed at him. What if this was more than a threat? What if it was a message? A warning that humanity, despite everything, was not to be underestimated. Elena's ship locked into the docking bay with a shudder, magnetic clamps engaging with a hiss. The airlock cycled open, revealing the sterile interior of the Nexari vessel. The Orphans' containment module was nearby, their muffled cries guiding the human crew as they advanced. Ryan led the charge, weapons raised, senses keyed to every shadow. The corridors were cold, metallic, and oppressive, the scent of machine oil and recycled air thick in the air. Every corner was a potential ambush, every flicker of light a possible trap. Yet the human soldiers moved with practiced precision, driven by a fierce protective instinct. The orphans, despite their fear, looked up as the doorway opened. Their eyes, wide and shining, met the uniforms of their rescuers. Some reached out, trembling hands grasping toward the hope that had just arrived. Elena's heart clenched at the sight. These children were more than victims. They were survivors, echoes of a humanity that refused to fade quietly into the dark. She vowed silently that not one would be left behind. Suddenly, the Nexari alarms blared louder, warning of reinforcements closing in. Nex'Kel's voice crackled over the comms, a mixture of fury and disbelief. "You will not escape!" But Elena and her crew pressed on, the narrow corridors shrinking around them as they guided the orphans toward the human ship. The promise of rescue was close, fragile, fleeting, but fiercely burning. And somewhere deep in the shadows of the warship, the Nexari commanders realized they had underestimated the resolve of a single human vessel, and that sometimes all humanity needed was one ship to remind the stars what they were made of. The expanse of space before the Nexari armada was a velvet black canvas, studded with distant stars that shimmered like pinpricks of cold light. The great fleet, a slow, moving constellation of warships, cruised in disciplined formation, their dark hulls gleaming faintly under the distant glow of a dying star. Nex'Kel stood on the bridge of the flagship Vorthal, his tall frame rigid and alert. The massive viewport framed the isolated figure of a human vessel, a solitary speck drifting unnervingly close to the armada's perimeter, like a lone ember clinging against the night winds. The humans, he reminded himself, were an unpredictable species. Yet, even with that knowledge, the presence of this single ship, barely the size of a corvette, was baffling. It seemed almost laughable in comparison to the Nexari fleet, 1,000 times smaller than even a single warship here, and yet it pulsed with an energy that Nex'Kel could not easily dismiss. A whisper of defiance radiated from it, an intangible aura of resilience that teased at his instincts. Quinlex, the Armada's chief scientist, stood beside him, his many eyes reflecting the steady hum of the ship's systems. "Commander," he said, voice a low rumble, "ore sensors detect no weapons' signatures beyond standard human arrays. No emissaries, no drones. Only a single crewed vessel. Their life signs indicate a small complement, but there is something anomalous about the energy readings." Nex'Kel frowned. "Anomalous how?" "A curious resilience," Quinlex replied, tapping his multi-fingered hand on the holographic display. "Their shields are weak, power levels are low. Yet there are bursts of high energy emissions, irregular and unpredictable. It is as though their systems are compensating for some internal stress, but the exact nature is unclear." Nex'Kel studied the human ship. Its silhouette was jagged and angular, a blend of practicality and rugged endurance, as if designed by a species that had mastered survival not through overwhelming power, but through cleverness and grit. The faint glow of its engines cast a pale blue trail, flickering against the cold void like the heartbeat of a lone predator. A clatter echoed through the Vorthal's command deck as Nex'Kel's fingers tapped rhythmically on the console. His mind was a tempest of conflicting emotions, disdain at the audacity of this fragile craft daring to approach the Armada, curiosity about its strange energy signatures, and an undercurrent of unease that he could not suppress. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Let us see if they offer surrender or parley." The comms officer nodded, fingers flying over his controls. The deep silence of space was broken by a crackle, the faint hiss of the human voice filtering through. "This is Commander Elena Torres of the vessel Endurance. We request immediate dialogue regarding the recent abduction of human orphans." "Stand down." Nex'Kel's eyes narrowed. Orphans, he repeated internally. This was the first concrete confirmation of the human's mission. Something he had only suspected from the scattered intelligence reports. The Nexari pirates had indeed been preying on the vulnerable, snatching children from the shattered remnants of human colonies. Yet the idea that a single ship would respond so boldly was beyond expectation. Response, he said aloud, steadying his voice. You have trespassed into Nexari space. Surrender your vessel and crew, and you will be spared. Resistance is futile. The reply was immediate, resolute. We do not surrender. We are coming to reclaim what is ours. Before Nex'Kel could react, the Endurance shuddered violently. The sensors screamed warnings. An unseen strike had impacted the vessel's shields. A pulse of energy, weak but precise, had grazed the human ship's port side. The bridge lights flickered as the ship rolled slightly, but it held. The Armada's tactical officers bristled, fingers poised to retaliate, yet Nex'Kel raised a hand. This was no ordinary attack. It was a calculated message. Target their propulsion array. Nex'Kel ordered with sudden clarity. Disable the vessel without destroying it. I want them alive for questioning. The Nexari fleet shifted, a coordinated ballad of warships converging on the human speck. Plasma beams arced through the darkness, streaks of violet and emerald lancing out toward the Endurance. The human ship's shields flared, glowing with erratic pulses as they absorbed the blows. Quinlex's voice was tense now, eyes darting across multiple displays. Commander, their shields are adapting faster than predicted. The energy signatures are fluctuating in response to each strike. It is as though they are learning and evolving. Nex'Kel's mind raced. Could a single vessel truly possess such adaptive technology? It defied all known science, a testament to human ingenuity. Despite their diminutive size, these creatures fought with the desperation and cunning of cornered predators. The Endurance blinked out of sensor range for a moment, only to reappear suddenly behind one of the Nexari frigates. The tactical officers gasped. The human vessel had executed a sudden, daring maneuver, slipping through the fleet's formation with breathtaking speed and precision. The Vorthal rocked as energy beams slammed into its hull, rippling across the armor plating. The Nexari were unprepared for such aggression from so small a foe. Nex'Kel's mind swirled with a mix of admiration and frustration. This was no ragtag ship, it was a finely tuned instrument of resistance. Deploy pursuit drones. Nex'Kel commanded. Contain them at all costs? The Armada's drones scuttled forward like metallic spiders, their sensors gleaming as they locked onto the Endurance. But the human ship answered with a burst of electromagnetic interference, scrambling the drone's guidance systems. Explosions dotted the void as drones lost control and were destroyed. Inside the Endurance, Commander Elena Torres gritted her teeth, hands steady on the controls as alarms blared around her. The ship groaned and shuddered from the impacts, but her focus was unyielding. The Orphans' lives depended on her. Each maneuver, each calculated risk, was a thread holding together their fragile hope. The faint metallic scent of the ship's interior was tinged with the acrid tang of overheated circuits. The steady hum of the engines mingled with the distant cries of the children she carried, small voices, muffled through sealed compartments. Safe for now, but vulnerable. The responsibility was a heavy weight, but it steeled her resolve. Back aboard the Vorthal, Nex'Kel's thoughts churned. This single human ship, so fragile against the immense might of the Nexari fleet, was a paradox. How had they managed to survive, and even to fight back with such effectiveness? The answer lay not in their technology alone, but in their spirit, their indomitable will to protect what was precious, no matter the odds. Quinlex's voice broke through the commander's reverie. Commander, I have analyzed their power signatures further. Their shield adaptations appear to be linked to an advanced neural interface, something akin to biological feedback integrated with their technology. They are not just operating their ship, they are merging with it. Nex'Kel found himself intrigued despite himself. The notion of a symbiotic relationship between human and machine was unsettling yet fascinating. It suggested a level of integration and resilience that the Nexari had never encountered before. The Endurance executed another daring tactic, diving into the shadow of a nearby asteroid cluster. The fleet's sensors struggled to maintain contact through the rocky debris. Nex'Kel ordered a cautious advance, wary of potential traps. As the human ship weaved through the labyrinth of space rocks, Nex'Kel's mind raced through possibilities. This was more than a simple rescue mission. It was a challenge to the very might of the Nexari. Suddenly, the Endurance emerged from the shadows with a sudden salvo of missiles aimed at the flagship. The warheads streaked toward the Vorthal, their trajectories calculated with lethal precision. The flagship's shields flared violently, absorbing the impact with grinding metal groans. Damage reports flooded the command console, minor breaches in the outer hull, systems faltering under the strain. Yet the Vorthal remained intact, its immense mass a testament to Nexari engineering. Nex'Kel's breath caught for a moment. The audacity of a single human ship attacking the core of an armada was unprecedented. They were not just survivors, they were warriors. Concentrate fire, Nex'Kel commanded, voice steely with renewed determination. What will crush this insolence? The fleet responded with a thunderous volley of energy blasts, searing the void where the Endurance had been moments before. But the human vessel was not there. It had vanished, leaving behind only disturbed particles and the faint echo of its passage. Nex'Kel's frustration deepened into a cold fury. How could one ship evade an entire armada with such ease? His pride as a commander was wounded, but deeper still was a growing respect, an acknowledgement that the humans possessed something the Nexari lacked. Quinlex's analysis filled the silence. Their evasive maneuvers exploit our sensor blind spots combined with their intimate knowledge of local celestial terrain. It is not mere technology, it is an art form, honed by necessity and desperation. Nex'Kel took a slow breath and fixed his gaze on the stars beyond. For all their might, the Nexari had underestimated what was possible when a species fought not for conquest or greed, but for survival, for family. The Endurance reappeared near the fleet's rear, its hull scarred but operational. The children it carried were the beacon of human resilience, a fragile flame burning defiantly against the darkness. Nex'Kel realized then that this was not a battle of brute force but of wills. The human's courage was a weapon far sharper than plasma or missiles. The Armada's sensors caught a faint transmission from the human ship, a signal encoded in bursts of light and sound. It was a call, not for surrender, but for recognition. Recognition of a tenacity that would not be crushed. In the silence of space, the message was clear: sometimes one ship, driven by the unbreakable spirit of those it carries, is all humanity needs. Nex'Kel knew then that the conflict was no longer simply about kidnapping or territory. It had become a reckoning between two species, each defining their essence through the crucible of battle. The Vorthal prepared to engage once more, its weapons systems primed and ready. But in the commander's heart, a seed of something new took hold. An acknowledgement that the human's resilience was the first revelation of a deeper truth. In facing this lone ship, the Nexari were not merely confronting an enemy, but bearing witness to the indomitable will of a species that refused to be broken. As the stars watched silently, the Armada braced for the next encounter, knowing that the true battle was only just beginning. The void outside the viewport shimmered with the cold light of distant stars, pinpricks of silver glitter against the fathomless black. Within the bridge of the Nexari dreadnought Vrathak, the atmosphere was thick with tension, a silent storm brewing amid the dim glow of control panels and cosmic surveillance arrays. Nex'Kel stood still, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the starfield, unmoving, as if trying to pierce the darkness beyond space itself. He had seen many battles, commanded fleets that had crushed entire worlds beneath the weight of overwhelming force. Yet here, in this unyielding blackness, he faced something new, something that unsettled the core of his belief in military supremacy. The single human ship, a sleek vessel barely larger than a hunting frigate by Nexari standards, hovered before the colossal armada like a solitary flame flickering defiantly against a tempest. Its hull, scarred and battered, gleamed faintly under the reflected starlight, but it moved with an elegance and precision that spoke of an unyielding spirit and an unspoken promise: we will not falter. Nex'Kel's jaw clenched beneath the ridges of his chitinous face. It cannot be, he thought, the words unspoken but heavy with disbelief. One ship against all of us, a mere mistake, a diversion at best. He shook his head, but the image on the main holo screen was undeniable. The human vessel was not retreating. The hum of the starship's main engines thrummed through the deck, a deep vibration felt beneath Nex'Kel's feet. It was a sound both primal and mechanical, a reminder that every movement, every decision, rippled through the cold calculus of war. Quinlex, the Nexari scientist and tactician, hovered nearby, her slender form tense, antennae twitching in subtle agitation. "Commander," she whispered, voice low and uneasy. "The humans' energy signatures are inconsistent with their size. Their power output fluctuates far beyond known parameters. It defies our models." Her eyes scanned the data streams, unable to reconcile the readings with the reality before them. Nex'Kel's mind raced through the possibilities. A decoy. But if not, then what? His thoughts spiraled, the certainty of Nexari domination unraveling thread by thread. The usual battlefield calculations, the overwhelming numbers, the powerful weapons, the crushing tactics, fell short when faced with this enigmatic human audacity. Inside the human bridge, Elena Torres stood poised, a stark contrast to the chaos she knew raged just light minutes behind her. The air was thick with recycled oxygen and the faint metallic tang of the ship's interior. Her senses were alive, fingertips tingling from the energy coursing through the control interfaces, the hum of the ship's reactors vibrating softly beneath her boots, the distant echo of calm chatter from her crew, terse and precise. Her eyes narrowed, scanning the array of enemy vessels looming like colossal shadows. The Nexari Armada's size was overwhelming, their deadly intent unmistakable. Yet, within her chest, a fierce calm blossomed. Though only one ship stood here, the rescue fleet was unwrote, and time, however scarce, was on their side. Elena's mind danced through tactical possibilities, overlaying the battlefield with imagined vectors, maneuvers, and gambits. She thought of Ryan Rodriguez, her trusted soldier and co-strategist, pinned behind the consoles in the ship's combat bay, coordinating defense drones and weapon systems with unrelenting focus. Ryan's voice crackled through her earpiece, brief but steady, a lifeline in the crucible of conflict. The ship shuddered as a sudden burst of energy slammed against its shields. The collision sent ripples through the hull, a deep vibration that resonated in Elena's bones. The Nexari had opened fire. Outside, the void erupted in bursts of light. Green plasma bolts streaked like deadly comets, weaving through the darkness with terrifying speed. The human vessel shuddered again, sparks flying from exposed conduits as energy diffusers flared to compensate. Elena's fingers danced across the controls, redirecting power, stabilizing shields, and preparing countermeasures. "We can't hold out forever," she thought, the weight of responsibility settling heavier with each passing moment. But every second counts. Back aboard Vrathak, Nex'Kel's comfac had cracked. The single human ship was not merely surviving, it was hunting. The agility of its maneuvers defied prediction, each evasive twist and turn a slap against the arrogance of the armada. The humans fought not with brute force alone, but with a tactical genius that seemed to anticipate every move. Impossible. Nex'Kel muttered again, watching as a swarm of drone fighters launched from the human ship, their sleek forms darting into the shadowed corridors of the larger fleet. The drones moved with uncanny coordination, slipping through gaps in the Nexari formation, striking at vulnerable points with surgical precision. Quinlex's voice broke through the tension, measured but urgent. "Commander, the human vessel's weapons are not just energy-based. There are electromagnetic pulses, nanite swarms, and, most perplexingly, localized temporal distortions." Her antenna twitched in disbelief. "They are fighting on a level we have never encountered." Nex'Kel narrowed his eyes, focusing on the data streams. The idea that an opponent so small could wield such overwhelming technology was both terrifying and humbling. His entire strategy, the assumed superiority of numbers and firepower, crumbled under this new revelation. The Vrathak surged forward, its massive engines flaring as it attempted to close the distance. The bridge shook violently as enemy fire from the human ship found its mark, tearing into armor plating and sending showers of sparks cascading into the void. Nex'Kel felt a rare sting of frustration, a physical ache born not of injury, but of the shattering of his expectations. He realized with a sinking certainty that this encounter was more than a skirmish. It was a lesson written in the language of fire and steel, a reminder that sometimes even the mightiest armadas could be brought low by a single, resolute flame. Elena's ship darted amidst the chaos, weaving through the labyrinth of larger vessels like a phantom. The smell of scorched circuitry and ozone filled the air as the battle raged, punctuated by the rhythmic thrum of the ship's weapon systems cycling and the sharp crackle of communications. Her mind was a storm of calculations and instinct. Every decision carried the weight of lives. Her crew, the orphans they had sworn to protect, and the countless others who depended on their success. The stakes were unimaginable, yet in this crucible she found clarity. She thought of the orphans, their frightened faces behind the ship's reinforced containment bays, and knew that their salvation depended on endurance. The rescue fleet was closing in, but only if she could hold the line long enough. Suddenly, a pulse of energy burst outward from the human vessel. Blue, white, and blindingly bright. The shields of the closest Nexari cruisers flickered, and then collapsed. their hulks illuminated in a ghostly glow before silence claimed them. The destruction was swift and deliberate, a message etched in devastation. Nex'Kel's eyes widened. They are not just evading, they are dismantling our forces with precision. His voice was a low growl, laced with disbelief and mounting respect. This is no mere combatant. This is a tactical genius in action. Quinlex's expression was grim. This engagement does not follow any known paradigm. If this single ship can dismantle our fleet piece by piece, the ramifications. Nex'Kel barely heard her words. His mind churned, searching for a counter, a weakness, a misstep. But with each passing moment, the human ship's maneuvers revealed nothing but calculated brilliance. The stars outside seemed to pulse in rhythm with the battle. Silent witnesses to the crescendo of destruction. Elena's ship was a beacon of defiance, its hull scarred but unyielding, a symbol of humanity's indomitable will. Inside the human command center, the air buzzed with tension and resolve. Sensors beeped warnings as enemy fire brushed close, but Elena remained steady, her gaze fixed on the ebb and flow of battle. She could feel the weight of history pressing down, the echo of countless ancestors who had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. Her thoughts drifted momentarily to Ryan, coordinating defensive arrays amidst the chaos. His steady voice over the comms was a lifeline, a reminder that even in the vastness of space, they were not alone. The ship jolted violently as another Nexari strike hit home. Systems flickered, alarms blared, and the taste of recycled air thickened with the scent of sinned circuitry. Elena's breath caught, but she did not falter. With a fierce determination, she engaged the ship's countermeasures. A complex ballet of electronic warfare, energy redirection, and kinetic defenses. The dance was fluid, each move anticipating the next, a living symphony of survival. Outside, the battlefield was a shifting tableau of light and shadow. The Nexari armada, once a symbol of overwhelming might, was now a fractured force, its vessels falling one by one to the relentless precision of a lone attacker. Nex'Kel's mind raced. The second revelation settling deep within him power was not merely in size or firepower, but in the cunning to wield them. This human commander had rewritten the rules of engagement, turning desperation into strategy and desperation into victory. The first revelation, the arrival of the rescue fleet, had been a shock, but the second was more profound. Sometimes, one ship was all humanity needed. The void was silent again, save for the distant echoes of battle fading into the cold expanse. The human vessel, battered but unbroken, held its position, a solitary sentinel against the darkness. And somewhere, deep within the heart of the Nexari armada, Nex'Kel understood that a new era had dawned. The age of overwhelming force had met its equal in cunning and courage. The true battle was just beginning. The cavernous hold of the alien pirate flagship was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the distant hum of machinery and the occasional metallic clank echoing through the dim corridors. Nex'Kel stood still, his multiple eyes reflecting the flickering lights above, watching the scene unfold with mounting disbelief. The human vessel, small, battered, and alone, had breached their defenses with an ease that defied logic. Yet it was not the breach that confounded him now. It was the sight of the children, huddled together, their faces pale but resolute, standing shoulder to shoulder alongside their rescuers. Quinlex, the ship's chief scientist, paced nervously nearby, his elongated fingers twitching with unease. "Commander," he murmured, voice tinged with disbelief, "these humans, they exhibit behaviors we cannot quantify. their unity in the face of adversity. It transcends our understanding of survival instincts. Nex'Kel's gaze shifted to the grouping of orphans and soldiers. They moved as one, a seamless organism of trust and determination. The children's eyes, wide and bright despite exhaustion, reflected something deeper than fear or hope. Outside the ship, the void was silent, but for the faint chatter of distant engines. The human rescue fleet's arrival had been swift, minutes, not hours. A blink in cosmic terms. The alien armada, once confident in their dominance, now bristled with tension. Their scanners picked up the fleet on every side, warships bearing the insignia of Earth's military, their formation tight and purposeful. The sheer scale was overwhelming, yet the flagship's crew remained fixated on the smaller human vessel inside. Elena Torres stood at the bridge of her ship, her hand steady on the control console, despite the adrenaline flooding her veins. Every sensor echoed with the presence of the alien armada, a vast sea of hostile intent. Yet her mind was singularly focused on the children she had sworn to protect. Their faces haunted her dreams. The helplessness in their eyes, the night the pirates took them from their homes. Now, those same eyes burned with a spark that refused to be extinguished. She inhaled deeply, the recycled air tinged with the faint scent of cold metal and ozone, a stark contrast to the warm memories of Earth she carried within her. The ship's hull vibrated gently beneath her feet, the engines humming a steady rhythm. Around her, the crew moved with practiced efficiency, their expressions a mirror of her own unwavering resolve. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but not outmatched. Not while those children clung to life, and not while humanity's unbreakable bonds held fast. Back inside the alien flagship, the corridors were alive with a tense energy. Guards moved cautiously, blasters primed, but even their bravado faltered under the weight of what they had witnessed. The orphans, once perceived as mere cargo, helpless, expendable, now stood transformed. The sight of Ryan Rodriguez, a human soldier, sitting beside a small boy no older than 5, whispering words of comfort and encouragement, reverberated like a shock wave through the Nexari psyche. Nex'Kel's thoughts churned. For cycles, his species had studied human psychology, attempting to predict their reactions, to exploit their weaknesses. Yet here, in this darkened hold, their greatest miscalculations lay bare. The human's capacity for connection, their fierce loyalty even to strangers, was an anomaly that defied every simulation and model. The ship's alarms shattered the silence abruptly, a piercing wail signaling an incoming assault. Nex'Kel's posture stiffened as the hull groaned under the pressure of plasma blasts. Outside, the human fleet had begun their offensive, precise and relentless. The alien vessels responded, their weapons lighting the void in brilliant arcs of blue and green fire. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers, casting eerie shadows inside the pirate flagship. Quinlex's voice cut through the chaos. "Commander, the children must be evacuated. The structural integrity of this sector is compromised." His eyes darted toward the bulkheads, which quivered ominously as the ship shuddered. Nex'Kel hesitated, torn between duty and a strange, unfamiliar stirring of something akin to respect. These humans, with all their fragile appearance, had sparked a revelation within him, a recognition of strength not measured in firepower alone. Amid the clamor, a sudden jolt threw everyone off balance. The lights flickered violently before plunging the hold into near darkness, save for the emergency red glow casting ghostly hues on the walls. The sound of a breach in the hull was unmistakable. a hiss of escaping atmosphere, a chilling reminder of mortality. Elena's voice came over the comm link, calm yet commanding. "This is Commander Torres. Extraction teams are en route. Maintain defensive perimeters around the children." Her words were laced with steel, each syllable a lifeline. Ryan's hand brushed against the arm of a trembling girl, offering a grounding presence. He murmured reassurances, silent promises that they would survive this night. The children, sensing the gravity, found courage in his steadiness. Their collective heartbeat seemed to synchronize, a silent vow against despair. The alien crew members scrambled to respond, but panic flickered beneath their practiced exterior. Their weapons discharged in wild bursts, but the human fleet's coordination rendered these futile. Explosions rippled through the outer decks, debris cascading like lethal rain. Nex'Kel's mind raced. The third revelation, the final piece of this harrowing puzzle, dawned upon him with clarity. It was not just the humans' resilience or their tactical prowess. It was the unbreakable bonds that tethered them. Bonds forged in loss, in hope, in a shared fight for survival. He recalled his ancestors' tales of conquest, the endless hunger for dominion that had driven the Nexari for generations. Yet here, confronted with the raw power of human connection, that ambition suddenly seemed hollow. The depth of loyalty these humans displayed, how they rallied to protect the weakest among them, was a force beyond mere technology or numbers. The ship lurched again, the impact closer this time. Metal groaned and shuddered, and Quinlex's voice rose in alarm. "Commander, the life support systems are failing. We must abandon this section immediately." Nex'Kel activated his communicator, issuing rapid orders to seal bulkheads and prioritize evacuation. Yet as he turned to leave, his gaze lingered on the human vessel, still battered but unyielding. The children, no longer captives but comrades, stood defiantly beside their rescuers, the corridors filled with the staccato rhythm of boots. Soldiers moving swiftly, the hum of energy shields igniting. Human voices echoed commands, steady and unbreakable. The pirates, once masters of this domain, were now on the defensive, pushed back by an enemy they had underestimated. Outside, the stars bore silent witness to the unfolding drama. The void, infinite and cold, contrasted sharply with the warmth radiating from the human ships. Each vessel pulsed with life, a testament to humanity's indomitable spirit. Elena's thoughts drifted briefly to the orphans, each one a story, a future reclaimed from darkness. She felt the weight of every life entrusted to her care, the unspoken promise to never let them fall again. The faint hum of the engines was a lullaby and a battle cry all at once. As the alien flagship's hull began to fracture under relentless assault, Nex'Kel found himself confronting a truth that challenged all he believed. The humans did not fight alone. They carried with them an unyielding network of trust and hope. Their unity was their greatest weapon, their shield against oblivion. He watched as the orphans linked arms with their rescuers, an unspoken pact of protection and defiance. The children's faces, though marred by fear and exhaustion, shone with a light that could not be extinguished. The final moments in the hold were a whirlwind of coordinated chaos. Explosions tore through compartments, alarms blared in a discordant symphony, and emergency lights painted the walls in harsh reds and blues. Yet amidst this, the human presence remained a beacon of calm. Ryan shepherded a group of children through the narrow passageways, the weight of responsibility heavy yet embraced. Each step forward was a testament to survival, not just physical, but emotional and spiritual. Elena's fleet pressed the advantage, their combined firepower dismantling the alien armada's formation. The deafening roar of engines, the sharp bursts of weaponry, and the distant crackle of communications wove together into a tapestry of war and salvation. As the breach widened, Nex'Kel made a decision that would echo through Nexari history. He ordered a ceasefire on his flagship, signaling an end to the conflict, not through surrender but through recognition. The humans had revealed something profound, that even in the darkest reaches of space, the light of unbreakable bonds could redefine destiny. In the final moments before the evacuation, Nex'Kel allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. The piratical ambitions that had driven his kind now seemed petty beside the enormity of what he had witnessed. The humans, with all their fragility, had demonstrated a strength born not from domination, but from unity. As the children were lifted aboard the rescue ships, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of emergency lights, Nex'Kel understood this was no mere victory of firepower or strategy. It was a triumph of the human spirit, a revelation that would ripple across the stars. The pirate fleet receded, battered and humbled, while the human forces regrouped, their formation unbroken and resolute. Elena's voice pierced the calm, link one final time, steady and resolute, mission accomplished. The children are safe. A silence settled across the battlefield, heavy with the weight of revelation and the promise of a new dawn. Nex'Kel's last sight of the orphan hold was of small hands gripping tightly to those who had come to rescue them. In that grasp, he saw the true meaning of strength, unbreakable bonds that no force could sever. The third revelation had been unveiled sometimes. All humanity needs is a single ship, a single stand, and the unshakable faith of those bound together to change the course of history. The void outside the shattered hull of the Vigilant was a canvas of cold, merciless stars. Silent and indifferent, they blinked down on the chaos unfolding beneath their gaze. The Nexari armada's massive warships loomed like iron leviathans, their hulls etched with scars of the earlier skirmishes. Despite their overwhelming numbers, a sudden, unyielding tension gripped the air, a palpable anxiety that even their cold-blooded commander, Nex'Kel, could not dismiss. Within the dimly lit command chamber of the Iron Maw, Nex'Kel's multifaceted eyes flickered rapidly, processing data streams flooding from the tactical screens. The once smug confidence, the certainty of victory, was now cracking like brittle ice underfoot. The human ship, the Vigilant, was no larger than a skiff beside their colossal cruisers, yet it moved with a reckless, unrelenting fury. Every attack it launched seemed to reverberate with more force than its size should permit. Nex'Kel's mandibles twitched in frustration. Suboptimal tactical response. He muttered, voice low and mechanical. This vessel, it should have been neutralized immediately. How is it still operational? Quinlex, the Nexari scientist, hovered near the commander's console, his elongated fingers tapping excitedly against the data pad. Commander, my analysis suggests the human ship's weapons systems are powered by a type of quantum flux generator. It provides an immense energy output with minimal signature. Their technology is anomalous. We have underestimated their capabilities. Nex'Kel's eyes narrowed. An anomaly we will extinguish. He turned his attention back to the window, where the Vigilant darted through a maelstrom of laser fire, a dark silhouette against the blazing trails of Nexari plasma bolts. The human ship's hull bore fresh scars, but it refused to yield. The Vigilant's bridge was a hive of intensity, Commander Alina Torres' hands moved with precise, fluid motions over the controls, her gaze sharp and unyielding. Despite the alarms blaring and the smell of sinned circuitry permeating the air, her mind was a wellspring of resolve. Around her, Ryan Rodriguez adjusted his weapon systems, sweat mingling with grime on his brow. The small crew worked as one, their heartbeats synchronized with the vessel's thrum, every decision a thread in the tapestry of survival. The Vigilant was all they had, yet it seemed enough. The moment stretched taut as the Vigilant closed the distance to the nearest Nexari cruiser. The alien warship's thick armor plates gleamed under the plumes of weapon fire, but the human vessel's approach was unwavering. Elena's eyes scanned the enemy's structural, weak points from her tactical display, memorizing the blueprints with surgical precision. Targeting port side reactor array, she whispered to herself, voice steady but threaded with urgency. If we can breach the containment field, we might disable their energy core. Ryan's voice crackled through the comm. Weapons locked and ready. Elena exhaled slowly, feeling the familiar surge of adrenaline as she initiated the firing sequence. The Vigilant shuddered violently with the discharge of its pulse cannon, a concentrated beam of shimmering cobalt energy lancing through the dark vacuum. Time seemed to dilate, every particle of light stretching into an eternity as the beam struck the Nexari cruiser's hull. An explosive bloom erupted, metal fracturing and vaporizing in a cascade of fire and shrapnel. The cruiser's engines faltered, the vessel spinning helplessly into a death spiral. The other Nexari ships reacted instantly, redirecting fire towards the Vigilant. But Elena was already maneuvering with a deftness born of desperation and hope. Despite the fury of the assault, the human vessel twisted and weaved through the barrage, each movement a dance with death. The onboard sensors hummed, relaying the incoming torrent of plasma bolts, debris, and electromagnetic pulses. Elena felt their sting brush against the hull, the ship groaning in protest but holding fast. Below decks, the kidnapped orphans, the reason for this battle, huddled together in cramped quarters. Their wide eyes reflected the flickering emergency lights, some clutching at one another while others stared into the void they had never imagined would be their prison. Yet, in that harrowing moment, a faint thread of hope twined through their fear, carried on the unseen wings of the Vigilant. Back on the bridge, Elena's mind raced ahead, anticipating the Nexari commander's maneuvers. She knew this was not simply a battle of firepower, but of will. The aliens had the numbers, humanity had something else, an unbreakable spirit. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the ship as a plasma bolt tore through the aft shield generators. The lights flickered, the hum of the engines faltered, and for a heartbeat, dread clawed at Elena's chest. She gritted her teeth and forced her mind into calm. Ryan, status on shields. Partial down, Commander. Ryan replied grimly. Recalibrating now. We have maybe 60 seconds before they're completely offline. Elena's fingers flew over the console. Divert all auxiliary power to hull integrity. We can't afford to lose this ship now. The Vigilant groaned again, but the hull's reinforced plating glowed faintly, absorbing the damage. Outside, the Nexari armada adjusted their formation, their massive ships beginning a coordinated encirclement. Nex'Kel's voice resonated through the comm channel, cold and commanding. Surrender, human vessel. Your resistance is futile. Elena took a breath, her heart pounding like a war drum. Why don't surrender? She thought fiercely. Not while there's a chance to save those kids. Not while hope still burns. With a decisive motion, she initiated the final phase of their plan. The Vigilant surged forward, engines flaring with renewed vigor despite the damage. Its silhouette streaked toward the heart of the Nexari fleet, a comet of defiance blazing against the vast darkness. The human ship's pulse cannons began to glow with raw power, their energy converging into a searing lance aimed squarely at the flagship. Elena's hands trembled slightly, the weight of responsibility pressing like a stone upon her shoulders. She had to make this shot count. Time fractured again as the beam lanced outward. The flagship's hull was pierced, sparks and flames erupting from the impact point. The alien vessel trembled, fissures spider webbing across its surface. Alarms blared, their shrill cries mingling with the distant roar of the Vigilant's engines. Nex'Kel's mandibles hissed in rage and surprise. His eyes darted between the damage reports flooding his consoles and the human vessel. Now dangerously close, a spearhead of destruction.
"Shields failing! Hull breach imminent!"
Quinlex warned, his voice laced with disbelief. Nex'Kel's mind raced. The pride of the Nexari was faltering before a single human ship, a creature they had deemed insignificant. The thought was an affront, a challenge to everything his species believed. But before he could order a retreat or counterattack, the Vigilant activated a secondary system. From its underbelly, a pulse of electromagnetic energy surged outward, enveloping the flagship in a cascading wave of disruption. The alien ship's systems flickered, weapons systems shut down, propulsion faltered. The flagship shuddered, then began a slow, inexorable drift, powerless amid the void. Elena felt the tension ease just slightly as the flagship's glow dimmed. This was their opening. Suddenly, the comm channel crackled. A deep, resonant voice filled the Vigilant's bridge, not Nex'Kel's but something else. A human voice. "This is the United Earth Fleet. Cease hostilities immediately." The irony was not lost on Elena. The Armada had underestimated the single human ship, oblivious to the rescue fleet that had arrived silently, cloaked in the shadows of space. A dozen vessels, sleek and formidable, emerged from the nebula's edge, encircling the Nexari Armada like a predator's jaws closing. The alien ships faltered, their massive crews frozen in confusion and fear. The Vigilant had not fought alone. It had been the spark, the rallying point for humanity's swift and decisive counterstrike. Elena allowed herself a brief smile. The Orphans would be safe. The nightmare would end. In the eerie calm that followed, Nex'Kel's voice returned, colder now, stripped of arrogance. "You human vessel, you have changed the course of this battle." Elena's hand rested lightly on the console, her eyes steady. Sometimes, she thought, one ship is all it takes. The Vigilant drifted quietly now, its systems battered but alive, a beacon of resilience amid the wreckage of war. The stars outside continued their silent watch, indifferent yet witness to a moment where courage and hope had reshaped the fate of many. In this vast expanse, the smallest spark could ignite the greatest flame, and in that flame humanity burned bright. The air hung thick with the acrid tang of burnt plasma and the faint metallic scent of scorched circuitry, the remnants of a fierce battle still lingering in the enclosed corridors of the alien frigate. Flickering emergency lights cast stuttering shadows that danced along the cold, angular walls, their eerie glow illuminating the shattered panels and crumpled bulkheads where human and Nexari had clashed moments before. The silence that followed was heavy, not just with the absence of combat, but with the weight of realization settling deep into the bones of every survivor aboard. Elena Torres stood alone amid the wreckage, the hum of her suit's life support system steady against the chaos. Her breaths, shallow and deliberate, echoed in her helmet as she surveyed the battlefield. The once proud Nexari frigate, a behemoth of dark alloy and sharp angles designed to intimidate, now looked vulnerable and battered, its sleek form marred by scorched metal and shattered weapon arrays. The corridor beneath her boots was strewn with debris, twisted cables like lifelines severed, shards of glass from observation ports glinting like fallen stars, and the still forms of alien soldiers, their limbs frozen mid-action, faces contorted in a mixture of shock and disbelief. Beyond the reinforced viewport ahead, the vastness of space stretched endlessly, speckled with the scattered ships of the Nexari armada. Their once coordinated formation had shattered, ships drifting apart in disarray after the sudden and unexpected strike by the human rescue fleet. Elena's gaze lingered on the gleaming lines of human vessels, their hulls bearing the blue and white insignia of Earth, steady and resolute against the cosmic blackness. They had arrived in minutes, their rapid response a testament to human determination and preparedness. And now, here she was, the solitary human commander standing within the heart of the enemy's ship, the unlikely victor of a battle thought unwinnable. The silence was broken by a soft mechanical whir, a subtle shift in the atmosphere control system as it began to stabilize the interior environment. Elena's HUD flickered, displaying status updates in crisp green text, oxygen levels rising, power rerouted to critical systems, external comm channels opening. She exhaled, the faint hiss of her breath mixing with the sterile hum of reviving machinery. Her thoughts raced, memories of the recent chaos swirling with the undeniable truth that had dawned amidst the carnage. She had expected resistance, fierce and unyielding, from the alien pirates who had dared to kidnap human orphans. But she had never anticipated the profound complexity beneath the Nexari facade. The fear, confusion, and ultimately, the reluctant respect that would emerge from the ashes of conflict. The discovery of the orphans, frightened yet unharmed in the cold cells of the frigate's hold, had shifted something fundamental within her. The battle was no longer just a mission. It was a bridge between two species, bound by the harsh realities of survival. As she moved cautiously through the corridor, her footsteps muffled against the ribbed metal floor, she caught sight of a figure lying against the wall. A Nexari soldier, his armored chest rising and falling in labored breaths. His distinctive, translucent skin shimmered faintly under the emergency lights, revealing the pulsing bioluminescent veins that marked his kind. Despite the distance, Elena recognized the insignia of rank etched into the plating of his shoulder, a mid-level officer, likely a survivor of the failed boarding defense. She knelt beside him, her voice soft yet firm through the comm speaker. "You're safe now. Help is on the way." The soldier's eyes, wide and filled with a mixture of pain and disbelief, met hers. In that fleeting exchange, she saw not an enemy, but a being caught in the tangled web of galactic conflict. Just as human as she was, bound by duty but also by the hope of peace. Meanwhile, aboard the command bridge of the flagship Resolute, Nex'Kel sat rigid in his throne, like chair, the weight of failure evident in his every movement. The glow of the tactical displays cast jagged patterns across his sharp features, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the images of retreating human ships and the wreck of his own forces. His mind churned with questions and grudges. How had a solitary human vessel wrought such devastation? What hidden advantage possessed the enemy to counter the overwhelming might of the Nexari armada? Beside him, Quinlex, the alien scientist, adjusted the data pads that streamed with sensory readings and ship diagnostics. His usually impassive expression bore a rare trace of concern. "Commander, our sensors detected an unexpected energy signature within the human vessel. It appears their technology is not merely advanced but adaptive, capable of countermeasures that learn and evolve in real time." Nex'Kel's jaw clenched. Adaptive technology, and yet we dismissed their presence as a desperate gambit. Our arrogance cost us dearly. The bridge, once a hub of confident command, now reverberated with an uneasy quiet. Nex'Kel rose, moving toward the viewport that offered a panoramic vista of deep space, now scarred with the wake of retreating ships and flickering debris. The stars, distant and indifferent, seemed to mock the fragility of their ambitions. Back on the alien frigate, Alana found herself drawn toward the central hold, where the rescued orphans huddled together in a small cluster. Their wide eyes reflected a mixture of fear and wonder. Strangers in an alien world, saved by a species they scarcely understood. The children's faces were smudged with grime and streaked with tears, their tiny hands clutching at one another as if to anchor themselves in a shifting reality. She knelt among them, offering a gentle smile despite the exhaustion that tugged at her muscles. The warmth of human compassion radiated through the sterile environment, a beacon amid the cold steel. Slowly, the orphans began to relax, their sobs quieting to whispered questions and curious glances. One child, a girl no older than 7, reached out tentatively to touch Elena's armored glove, her small fingers tracing the smooth surface as if confirming the solidity of this newfound hope. Elena's heart clenched, a fierce resolve kindling within her. These children were more than pawns in a galactic conflict. They were the future, proof that even in the darkest corners of the universe, life could persist and thrive. Outside, the human rescue fleet coordinated their efforts with precision and calm, the efficient hum of their engines a comforting counterpoint to the chaos left behind. Ryan Rodriguez, a seasoned soldier aboard the flagship, stood at the ready, scanning the communications feed for updates. The sudden arrival and overwhelming force of the human fleet had turned the tide, but it was Elena's courage and cunning that had secured the prisoners and shattered the pirates' morale. The realization spread quickly through the ranks. Sometimes one ship was enough. Elena felt the vibrations of approaching vessels as they docked to the crippled alien frigate. The airlock hissed open, and a flood of human medics and security personnel poured in, their faces etched with relief and determination. The orphans were gently lifted into safe arms, their small bodies wrapped in soft blankets that smelled faintly of Earth's forests and oceans, scents that brought a fleeting comfort amid the alien cold. As the last child was evacuated, Alina lingered a moment longer inside the ship, her gaze tracing the paths of destruction and survival etched into the walls. The battle had left scars, but it had also forged an unexpected bond, a fragile thread of understanding between foes. The Nexari soldiers, once her enemies, now lay quiet, their expressions softened by the shared experience of defeat and the chance for reconciliation. Nex'Kel's voice crackled over the comm channel, steady but tinged with a newfound humility. "Human Commander Torres, your actions have revealed a strength and honor that transcends our differences. The Nexari will reconsider our stance toward your species. Perhaps this conflict need not define us." Elena responded with a measured calm, her voice carrying the weight of hope and pragmatism. "We did not come to war only to save our own. Let this be the beginning of understanding, of cooperation, of peace. The stars outside the viewport shone brighter now, no longer silent witnesses to conflict but symbols of potential unity. The warship systems hummed softly, the tension easing as the human fleet prepared for departure. The orphans, safe now, would grow within the embrace of their rescuers, their stories becoming threads woven into the tapestry of a shared future. For Alina Torres, the battle had been more than a mission. It was a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity, a reminder that even in the vastness of space, a single ship, a single resolve, could change the course of history. The corridors of the alien frigate, once a fortress of fear and captivity, now echoed with the quiet footsteps of peace. And as the rescue fleet slipped away into the void, the fragile promise of alliance glimmered on the horizon, born not from conquest, but from courage, compassion, and the unyielding hope that even enemies could become allies.